I have been building PCs now for about 5 or 6 years, and I remember a few times when I've asked myself, why the heck did I build this? Maybe it was an unorthodox CPU and GPU pairing. Maybe it ran super hot. Maybe I just wanted to experiment for the heck of it. But I don't think I've ever paired an expensive water cooling case with cheap, dated hardware like this right here. That's what the seller's trying to offload. Cheap, kind of pointless CPU, cheap graphics card, beefy case, $1,800. Here we go again.
The A500 Mark's Corsair's return to proper air cooling thanks to 4 direct contact copper heat pipes at the cold plate, a large aluminum fin stack, and 2 ML120 fans for silent operation down to 400 RPM. The fan brackets are a significant improvement over wire for easy adjustment to accommodate RAM up to 45 millimeters tall. Yes, I checked, that includes DOM plats. For a significant improvement over stock cooling and a long-term peace of mind, check out the Corsair A500, linked below.
Who knows what was going through this builder's mind? Perhaps a beefier system was housed here and it was parted out, I guess, and replaced with cheaper components. Maybe he or she anticipated upgrading in the future and just never got around to it. It happens all the time. I totally understand that logic, but that doesn't change the fact that this combination of hardware would be a terrible investment in early 2020, even if it is priced rather aggressively. And in this case, it's really not. For $1,800, I could build you one heck of a system that would bury this one. So what's it packing? For starters, we've got an Intel Core i3-8100. That's 4 cores, 4 threads, base frequency of 3.6. Yeah, nothing stellar. Frankly, kind of a terrible value when seen in the light of AMD offerings. You can buy 6-core, 12-thread Ryzen 5 2600s for days at $120 on Amazon and Newegg. No joke. I've linked them down below if you're interested. But if you absolutely insist on a Core i3 in 2020, for whatever reason, you can buy a brand new Core i3-9100F for less than $100. I know, pretty crazy. I remember when Core i3s were safely over $100. You can thank AMD for that. Now on to the other things. How about the motherboard? Cheap Asus Prime H310MD? I expected nothing more. But what is kind of confusing, this expensive Trident Z RGB kit, 3200 megahertz, I mean, it would make sense for Ryzen, but ultimately for Intel, super cheap 2400 megahertz kits, 16 gigs, would have been just fine. I really don't understand why you felt the need to throw a $100 kit of RAM in here. Bit confused as to how money was allocated in this build, to say the least. Again, assuming it was straight up built this way in the first place and not kind of recycled from a better PC, which might have been the case. Then we have the graphics card, and this just seals the deal. GTX 1050 Ti. Honestly, not a bad pairing with a Core i3, not what I'm trying to get at here, but in today's competitive low to mid-range graphics card market, a 1050 Ti is subpar. A used RX 570 will beat it. A brand new GTX 1650 for the same price will beat it, and it won't even need supplemental power. But however you look at it, $1,800 for a system with a GTX 1050 Ti in it is a downright joke at the end of the day. End of story. The i3 just adds insult to injury. Injury to your wallet, more specifically. So what is this system actually worth? Well, if you plug everything into PC Part Picker as is, you'll find that the total, including peripherals and the gaming chair he's including, is awfully close to the seller's asking price, right around $1,800 when you throw in the price of a used gaming chair. But there are several issues with the assumed prices here. For one, PCP says it can only find new GTX 1050 Ti's for $506 USD and above. And we obviously know from this video, that's a ridiculous price for a weak card. Pascal is a gen old, and that ignores the used bargains, again, that are out there, like the RX 570, the RX 580, which can be found pretty frequently for under $100 on eBay. So if you want to go the used route, which this system is clearly used anyway, just go for one of those. But for the sake of not being roasted in the comments, we'll stick to new parts for this example. Swapping for a Zotac 1650 Mini brings our total down to roughly $1,300. We have a better system now, congratulations. I'm gonna toss out the chair altogether. Not sure if anyone interested in a budget gaming PC will also want to pay hundreds of dollars for a used chair. That's kind of weird. I see no inherent issues with the CPU-GPU combo. I'd personally opt for Ryzen in the i3's place, but it won't change our price as much. The motherboard is fine. Cooler's a bit expensive in my opinion. I wouldn't spend $50 on a cooler for a locked Core i3, maybe $20 or $25 for a Hyper T4 or 212 Evo if you don't want to use a stock Intel cooler, but nothing more than that. Nonetheless, I'll keep it in for the sake of the argument. 16 gigs of Trident Z DDR4. Yeah, again, why on earth would you spend as much on RAM as you do essentially on the CPU in early 2020? You can cop 16 gigs for $60. Sure, it won't be blingy or fast, but it shouldn't be the thing that compromises our budget in a system of this caliber. talking around $500-600, which is really what the system should cost. Also, Intel chips aren't as dependent on frequency and timings as Ryzen counterparts, so you won't see anywhere near as big a difference when gaming, hence another reason to buy a cheaper kit. Still 16 gigs, but slower. Next up, this Aorus NVMe Gen 4 1TB SSD. What the heck is going on here? So many things wrong with this combination. For one, the most obvious is the way in which this person splurged on storage. This makes no sense for a build with an entry-level CPU-GPU combo. A 1TB hard drive and a small SATA SSD boot drive would do just fine. For two, this is a Gen 4 drive, meaning theoretical max transfer speeds are capped at around 5,000 megabytes per second, but only if you're using a PCIe 4 compatible motherboard and CPU. This cheap H310 from yesteryear ain't gonna fly. In fact, this particular model shares lanes with a SATA port. It doesn't even have a full 4 lanes to utilize, so you wouldn't even be milking a full Gen 3x4 NVMe drive for all it was worth. Such a pairing makes me wonder if some of these parts, again, were recycled from another more powerful system. Why else would you spend this much money on a storage drive? But either way, this combination right here that we're critiquing makes no sense, and the sellers decided to throw this burden onto the potential buyer. Not gonna fly here. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, this chunky Thermaltake Core P90. Look, it's a cool case, okay? Got nothing against it. Even for the price, it's not too bad, but only if you custom water cool with it, or at least throw an AIO in it, okay? That's what it was made for. It's more for show, really, than it is for function. I think even Thermaltake themselves would concede this point, but when paired with the current config, it makes no sense whatsoever. First of all, it's nearly $200 new. When you're paying twice as much for your case as you are for your CPU, something's wrong. Again, very few exceptions. Show builds and the like are usually excluded from that. But even with that aside, nothing about the hardware choices here complements the P90's feature set. We've got what looks like a micro ATX motherboard with an ATX chassis. I'm pretty sure it's micro ATX. We've got a beefy air cooler in a case specifically designed for water cooling. Heck, we've got 2 Corsair fans off to the right here that literally do nothing for this system. They're just sitting there pushing air behind the motherboard. No function whatsoever other than just to look pretty. In fact, the seller even admits as much. So look, don't make this mistake when hunting for used systems and parts. If a build pairs like unorthodox components, let's say, or if the way in which the system was budgeted doesn't make sense, stay away. And don't let the seller's mistakes become yours, because they will be yours if you pay this much money for them. Even if you paid MSRP for this system, it would make no sense to pair it this way. And that's why I make videos like these. Whether it be the price, parts choices, blatant lies, whatever, there's almost always something wrong, and that's why you should stay away. Are there good builds on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Let Go, OfferUp, etc., etc.? Sure, probably more good deals than bad, depends on where you live. But it doesn't change the fact that listings like these exist and may still seem appealing after the use of PC Part Picker and the like. It can be misleading. That's why I'm here. So let's round this one out. Replacing the P90 with a case that actually makes sense finally brings us below $1,000. That's nice. The only remaining details keeping our price high, quote unquote, are the peripherals. I don't know anyone who'd be willing to pay new prices for used peripherals, especially those like headsets and stuff that are specifically worn, become sweaty, become smelly. You get the point. Remove these all together and we've got a system that comes out to around $600 new. Not bad, but again, I think you'd get more bang for your buck if you ditched Intel for Ryzen and used the stock cooler. Get rid of that sports cooler from Arctic. It's just not worth it in a budget build like this. We'd be in the mid 500s and very capable of AAA 1080p gaming if you did that. That's the sweet spot. I know it's an easy cop out to remove peripherals altogether and claim, oh, see, this ad is way overpriced. But it's not necessarily the price that I'm trying to focus on here. Yes, it's overpriced as is by, okay, several $100s considering the hardware alone. But when you actually start pricing things out and researching the capabilities of things like the CPU and GPU, the things that really matter in your system, you start to realize the seller could have done much better with the budget at his disposal, assuming it's a guy, probably is. And the worst thing you could do in this situation is make his problem yours. If you like this one, click the like button, consider subscribing if you haven't already, leave a comment down below letting me know what you think, and I will catch you in the next one. My name's Greg, thanks for learning with me. I've been building PC, maybe it was an unorthodox CPU, who knows what this, at 1800, kind of a terrible, it's my stomach, wow, I need to eat lunch. You absolutely insist on Core i, but for the sake of not getting Sure, it won't be blingy or fast, but it shouldn't be the thing that the most obvious. This is a really stupid way to splurge on storage, if you ask me. And this cheap H310 from yesterday. This such a part. So look, don't take. Thanks for learning with me.